How do I feel good about which gigs I take, and how do I feel bad about them? When do I know what to take and what not to take? If we don't set up these parameters, we just start taking everything. And there's a time in my life where I did take a lot of things, but I kind of had some guideposts that would help me understand. And there are emails and messages and phone calls I'll get for gigs now, and I can tell you right away, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't care how much it pays. What is up? Welcome back to the Drum Show podcast. I'm Stephen Taylor. I've been an online drum teacher for, a lot of years. Since 2009, I think. I've been a professional drummer since I was 15, so a long time. And I want to talk about a question I got in my email. That's what this podcast is about. And I've got, because I've been doing this for a long time at this point, there are a lot of systems that I've set up. There's a lot of processes that I've set up that help me understand how to do certain things, whether it be in my practice time or with teaching students, or whether it be on the gig. Not only on the gig, but how to deal with certain situations. And so I've got a great question from Declan. Declan was a student of mine for a while. I have some people that come in and out of the drum school, some that stay for a long time. And Declan and I have emailed over the years multiple times, and he's playing out and gigging and doing the thing, right? So he had an email that I thought was a great question and a good topic that we could break out. And since this whole podcast was started with my audio messages, go back to the early episodes. It's audio messages that I recorded for people in my email. That's a lot of times how I answer my email. It's easier. And so this is a good question from Declan. He says, hey, Stephen, I've got a question for you about which gigs I should be taking. I'm contracting consistently at churches, and it's about a third of my income at the slowest and a little over half when I'm busier. I've recently had more opportunities to play with some bands in smaller venues outside of that. I'm starting to wonder which situations I should actually be using my talents in. I've heard you talk about joining your old band, Lovers and Liars, and how it was a requirement that their lyrics didn't have language. Is that a prerequisite for all of your gigs, covers, weddings, fill-in stuff, or just for projects you're creatively involved in? There's not really a great Christian music scene where I live, but how do I know if I should be playing in the alternative rock and indie scenes that are available? I know you grew up playing in churches as well, and I would really appreciate any advice or thoughts you have about playing in more secular stuff. Thanks, Stephen. Sincerely, Declan. All right, don't worry. Look, if you are not of a certain faith, if you're not, don't go to a house of worship, let's take that, because I know if that's a block for some people, take that heading off of it. And this is just how are you going to conduct, because I bet even though that may not be the thing, there are some the things in your life that would be deal breakers when it comes to choosing which gigs to take. How do I feel good about which gigs I take? That can be creatively, personally, financially, and how do I feel bad about them? When do I know what to take and what not to take? If we don't set up these parameters, we just start taking everything. And there's a time in my life where I did take a lot of things, but I kind of had some guideposts that would help me understand. And there are emails and messages and phone calls I'll get for gigs now, and I can tell you right away, no, I'm not going to take that. No, I'm not going to do that. I don't care how much it pays. And so what it does is it eliminates the amount of time I have to spend there kvetching with myself, but maybe I should take it. Maybe, boy, did I let go of a good experience, because a long time ago I said, no, that's not a good fit for me. I'm not doing it. And so in this particular instance, and this is not uncommon, you have a drummer that started in church. Many drummers started in church. Daru Jones, Jack White's drummer, he talked about in the guest artist podcast that we did. You can check that out. He talked about he started playing church. So many drummers started in church because it's an easy place to start, right? They're looking for volunteers. So when it comes to should I take things outside of there, outside of that, is Christian music the only thing I'm allowed to play? Is that, we have all these thoughts. What Declan referred to, I was in a band called Lovers and Liars, and was in that band for 4 or 5 years. I've got another project going with the guitarist from that band, actually, and we've stayed great friends, and our kids are friends. Actually, my son and his daughter were born within 23 hours of each other, and so we're very close. And when I auditioned for that band, their previous band, there were things I didn't agree with personally that had happened within that group, not only within the lyric stuff, but also places where their music had been seen. So It doesn't matter the band's name. This is just, and for every player in that band, this was a different thing. They all had different lines that they were like, no, don't cross that line, you know? And so not only, really the issue wasn't, did they use any like cuss words? Did they use any foul language? Like, it really wasn't about that. First, I'm looking at, okay, who are the people in the band? Do I like these people? What situations am I going to be playing in? If it checks out the box, I go to the next one. It's like, okay, what's the lyrical content in terms of what are we talking about? Do I agree with it? You know, if I'm going to get into a band where they're talking about supporting issues that I don't believe in, I'm probably not going to do that, right? Because it feels wrong, right? And so I look at that, and then the next thing is like, okay, what is the language they're using around that to convey those emotions? I believe that curse words are needed at times for emphasis. And a lot of people are like, oh, okay, but yeah, I don't believe they're all. I think it's situational. How are we using them, you know? But if we can't create a good song without using 4 words, if we can't be creative without doing that, I don't know. That's why I'm out on a lot of rap. I love rap. I listen to it a lot, but there's specific artists. Why? Because these other, I think it's like bro country is to me. I think it's cookie cutter. And I think we're just using that because it's the hip thing to talk about. And it's like, come on, be an artist here. Like, let's write about something unique and let's present it in a unique way. I'll listen to rap all day long. It has to do with like, was this, and I just talked about bro country. I have an issue with some bro country because it's the same topics talked about in the same way, used with, come on, let's do something different, right? So creatively, it's a non-starter for me. So when I was getting into that group, is really thinking through those things. The group that they had before, a couple of the maybe only one of them. I don't remember how many of them were in that. Not all of them. It used a ton of language. And, I was dad. So I'm like, okay, do I want my kids, is this the situation I want my kids hear me in? But also what they were talking about, but also their music had been on several porn films. I'm not okay with that, right? Like, I don't support the industry. It's not something I'm digging. If that's your bag, that's fine, but it's not something I want to let into my life and my marriage. So for me, these are all things looking historically at what they had done before. I was going, okay, I really kind of need to make sure this project's not going to go in that direction, right? I get 2 years in and be like, matter of fact, I'm not okay with being on that porn soundtrack. I don't think that's not something I want to do. I don't care how much it pays, So that is what had happened. There was a one song, and I asked them, I said, so question for you is, this one song, like, cool, I actually am fine with how you use this word. Is this the direction we're going? In other words, are all the songs or are we going in this other direction where all these other songs are? I just kind of looking for general direction. They said, well, we don't want to be limited creatively. And I said, okay, well, if you can't answer that with the direction we're going in, I don't know that this is the project for me, because I kind of need an answer on creatively which direction are we leaning. Didn't hear from him for a year, and then I got a reply back and said, hey, are you still interested? Well, by that time they had a bigger body of work I could look at, and I looked at it. I said, oh yeah, this is great. It's going to be a great experience. So I signed on with them. We got signed by Universal Records. We did the whole thing, right? And so that was what Declan was referring to. But we have to look at this from so many different angles. Is this the environment I want to be in? Is this the people I want to play with? Creatively, is this what I need to be doing? Am I at a point in my career where I just need to be taking whatever I can take? There was a time in my career where I wanted to, and I still take whatever I can take, right? And my goal was like, take as much as you can until you're so busy you can't take anymore. And some of it was free, some of it was paid. Like and everything led to other stuff. Johnny, the gig I just got up for a year and a half on playing with Steelwoods, I met Johnny playing for free for an artist that was being developed for a producer that, like, random stuff. It was like on Craigslist I had found, right? And we never got paid for that stuff, but we did down the road. Johnny and I worked together a lot, and Johnny and I message almost every day. Like, he's a great friend. He's a great person. And I'm glad that I did the free stuff so that I could meet him and we could work together. So you have to look at, like, does this cross the line with me morally? Does this cross the line with me financially? Does this cross the line with me creatively? There's so many different aspects that I try to look at when it comes to those types of things. Let's first specifically talk to those drummers that maybe play in church. And my dad was a pastor growing up. That's where I started playing in. So I understand that world and that thought process very, very well. There is nothing wrong. I can't get into this discussion of, can I only listen to an artist if they had a certain belief set? So in other words, because where do we draw the line there? Like I can only, let's say you are a Christian. I can only listen to Christian music. Okay. Well, what if it's a secular song, but the lyrics, it's the instrumental version? Well, that's okay. Well, what if I know the song so well that I'm singing the lyrics in my head? Well, that's not okay. Well, I know that, what about Mendelssohn? Can I listen to classical music? What about Brahms? What about Chopin? I'm not sure if they were a believer. I think they were a believer, but they were like, this person was a believer, but they were on crack. Like, I think this jazz artist was a believer, but they had, where do we draw the line there, right? And for me, you have to have this internal compass. And it's like, doesn't feel so good. Feels okay. And I listen to that internal voice, and I'm like, no, this is fine, Now, am I going to be put in some situations where maybe I'm not going to do everything that person is doing that's in the situation with me? Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be some situations, I sat down with my dad. I got my first full-time gig when I was 19, playing at the famous store on the corner of Conti and Bourbon on Bourbon Street. And recently we went through there on tour, and we were playing Tipitina's, and I got to go. That's a great club, by the way. If you're ever in New Orleans, Stanton Moore owns it with his band Galactic, I believe. And so I got to go over to the famous store where I used to play. It was kind of cool just to revisit it. I scheduled a lunch with my dad. My dad was a pastor, and I sat down and I said, Dad, I have a great opportunity to go play, but it's in a bar, it's in a club on Bourbon Street, and I don't want to do that if that's gonna be an embarrassment to you, And that was, at the time, I didn't really see anything wrong with it, and I thought professionally it was a good opportunity, but there was one more box I had to tick, and that was the guy that had raised me, kind of made me the man who I was. Are you okay with it? Do you see anything wrong with this? And he said, we were eating Mexican. I remember exactly where we were eating. And it was down the street from my old high school. He said, son, well, I guess I don't have any issues with it. He said, as long as I don't see you on TV in a bar somewhere naked, I guess I'm okay with it. And I said, well, if this is the bar, I'm pretty sure I can hit that, right? So in that situation, I checked with myself. I checked professionally. It checked it off with the pay. Basically, I'd have played for anything. And then I had one more box to tick, and that one didn't even have anything to do with me. And if he would have said no, I would have turned the gig down. Why? Because there was a relationship there that I didn't want to ruin, and no gig's worth that. No gig's worth ruining the relationship with your wife, right? Except sometimes there's nothing wrong with that situation. And sometimes it's okay communicating and going, hey, so I'm going to do this, and I know you may not understand, and you may not totally agree with it. I just need you to know I know that going in. I feel I'm supposed to be doing this, and I'm sorry that doesn't sit well with you. That's a discussion you can have with that person. But there's so many things we have to consider here. Specifically to what Declan is asking. Declan, you're playing a lot in church. That's great. I actually have rules around getting paid to play in church. If I am at my own church, I don't accept the pay. I really don't like it. Many times if I have gotten pay, maybe it's an extracurricular thing or something, I will donate that to something that we support or a cause or something. That's me, right? Now, if there's a church outside of my own church that wants me to take time away from my family and fill in, then I do accept pay for that. But that is only if it doesn't interrupt what we're doing as a family, right? So there are parameters there as far as how I'm going to play. I also will look at the particular church I'm going into and make sure there's nothing that completely offends kind of how I run my life. So that there's rules around me playing in churches too, and how I get paid. So that aside, there's absolutely nothing wrong with playing in bars. I've been doing it since I was a teenager. I had a minister of music that would play in a band with me in the bars. He's the best guy I ever knew. He's a pastor now, like best guy I've ever known, right? He would do it. He sees no problem with it, right? We have to, this is, for me, I'm not going to set that parameter around my creativity because there are so many people of different walks of life and faith. And if we box ourselves into only being around these certain people, I think we box in our artistry and our creativity. So we have to widen that and understand that just because we are in a situation where, let's say, you don't agree with drinking alcohol or you don't agree with whatever, just because you're in an area where that is happening doesn't mean you have to participate, right? So first off, I don't think there's anything wrong. Matter of fact, I think there's something wrong with not getting involved with the rock scene and the indie scene and the bar scene. Like, yes, go do it. Meet those musicians. They are good people. They're great people. You're going to learn a lot from them. You're going to make lifelong friends, and you're going to see opportunities explode that you haven't seen before. Let's talk about how once we've decided, and this could be if you want to be in a pickup band or you've got a group that wants to jam with you or whatever. We have these things that we start to then look at. And a long time ago, I started building my life around pillars. There are certain pillars in my life that I want to check with. And it's not okay if the financial pillar is just going great and my marriage pillar's down here in the dumps. This is not an okay situation. They need to be much more closer to this, and they'll do this. It's not always going to be even. They're going to do this some, but they can't do this. If they do this too much, maybe they can do this temporarily. I just went through a time in my life where it did that temporarily, and then I saw the strain, and I very quickly corrected it, right? Because it can't stay like that. Because if it stays like that, if it stays like that, it's going to stay like that. And this thing down here is going to continue to get deprioritized until it's out of your life. So what are those for me? For me, those are family, my marriage, faith, financial, creatively. These are some of the pillars that I'm looking at going, okay, does this deliver to this? Is this going to knock this out of whack? So let's talk about creatively. There's a group wants me to play with them, and the music is completely generic, cookie cutter, and I'm going to be playing bone in the nose easy stuff. I actually don't like the music, but it pays really, really well. I'm probably not going to take that gig. Now, I haven't always been in a position where I could do that. That doesn't mean I'm stuck up or snobby or I'm like elite because I don't like your music. It just means that, and I'm not going to communicate that to them. It's just going to be like, no, I don't think I want to do this gig. Thank you, though. I appreciate the opportunity. Please call me in the future if you have anything else. I just can't do this one. This podcast is brought to you by the Drum Better Daily program. That's actually my online drum school that I've run now for 12 plus years. Not only have I been playing the drums professionally since the age of 15, I've been teaching since the age of 18. Matter of fact, I talked to one of my first student a few days ago. I actually called him to see if he could sub a gig out for me. Daniel, love you, man. And he's still playing. He's still doing it on a pro level. I would love to have you go check it out at stevensdrumshed.com. You can find a link to that in the show notes or video description, whichever platform you're watching it on. But it truly is a community of like-minded drummers where we are striving to just be the best that we can be at the drums. In addition to over 70 pre-recorded drum courses, there's also a tech talk area where we talk about everything technology related as it pertains to the drums, e-kits, recording, doing videos, all of that stuff. There are forums where you can hang out with the other students as well. We do 2 live video student calls every week that you can join if you'd like to. We do guest artist calls monthly, and I'll even make you a personalized lesson plan if that's what you need. Yes, we talk about the nuts and bolts of drumming. Yes, I give you exercises, but we also talk a lot about how to practice more efficiently, how to practice better, and how to get more out of your practice time. I know you're just like me. You're busy, you're being pulled by work, by family, by friends, by other responsibilities. Whenever you practice, you really want to see gains and have it be productive. That is what we focus on in the Drum Better Daily program. I'll have to say personally, it's been really cool because some of these students I've worked with for over 12 years. We started running drum camps last year in 2022, and I got to meet some of them in person for the first time. Those drum camps have been selling out. They've been just blowing my mind with how much fun they are and how great a time it is to bring the community together in person. A community that was started online and has been going online strong now for over 12 years. I'd love to have you be a part of it. And you can just tell them, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I've got some stuff. You don't have to explain what the stuff is. The stuff could be in your head. Don't lie. But the stuff could be like, I've got some stuff. And that could be like, this doesn't deliver to these pillars, right? When I was young, though, and getting into, I didn't care. Give me the gigs. As long as morally I wasn't doing it, I want to do it. I want to get that experience. So I checked that, right? Financially, is this going to put me in a bad spot if I take this gig? It may be a gig that gives me great contacts and would be a lot of fun, but it's going to put my family kind of in a bad spot financially. Well, I'm not going to do that. And if I do, I need to set parameters around that. I'm going to take a gig on the road, and I know that the crew is a pretty hot running crew. In other words, when you're on the road, this is kind of like, they run hot. There are some crews that you go out with that there's a lot of extracurricular activities that happen. And with that comes a lot of drama, and you're put in a lot of situations. It's not the problem that you're not going to do anything in that situation. And you're like, Steven, I thought we were talking about music. This is about music, because music's about life for me. So in that situation, can I look at it and go, okay, cool. This is great music. I love it. It pays well. Family's okay with me doing it. There's an issue because they bring a lot of girls onto the bus, and that's where I live. So for me, personally, absolutely not. I'm not going to be a part of that group. Why? Oh, are you scared you're going to do something? I'm human, right? And so, look, it's not a thing of can I resist, a piece of chocolate once or twice or 3 times. It's, will you catch me at a time when I'm so hungry I would just like to eat anything? And you're like, Steve, we're talking about food. Yeah, but we're also talking about other things in life. Maybe that's alcohol, maybe it's drugs for you. Whatever that looks like for you, you have to be careful those situations you put yourself in. And I have put myself in where my wife is a very, very important pillar of my life. And I'm not going to put myself in situations that jeopardize that. Now, does that mean I never get put in a situation where a woman never comes on the bus, or I never talk to a female fan? No, that's ridiculous. That's extreme. And I would tell her that. I'd be like, come on, we don't have to have that discussion, right? Because she trusts me. But if we did, I'd be like, come on, give me a little credit here, right? That's a situation. And when I went out, Steel Woods is a great crew, by the way. Great people. Loved running with them. I love those guys. But I went out with them to make sure this was a situation I was cool with going in, because there was a member of their group that had passed away, and it had resulted from a life of excessive partying and things that happened because of that does to your body. Very tragic. I wish, he would have lived a long time. Fantastic musician. This happens, right? John Bonham. I could talk all day. This happens. But I had to make sure it was a situation that I was cool with. And in that area of, like, let's say women coming on the bus that are not wives or relatives or direct friends, this didn't happen. Even other band members from other bands that were playing with us, we were not cool, especially if there had been any extracurricular products involved in their evening or day. Definitely not coming. We had multiple times where we would be like, yep, nope, there's not a bathroom for you on this bus. I'm sorry. Because there were married guys, right? And it's like, avoid the appearance of evil. It's not like avoid the thing that you don't want to do. Avoid the appearance of doing that thing that you don't want to do, right? I don't want my wife to ever question it. If she gives me a call and she hears women on the bus, she's going to be like, what is going on right now? So that's an instance that I would draw a line on that. When I play in clubs, this is another good example. When I play in clubs, I'm packing up my gear. Maybe there's, a bird that's going to come chatter at, some of the band members or whatever. And you're sitting there going, okay, it's late at night. They look pretty good. Like, right? We're people here. Let's be honest here. What are you going to do in that situation? Do you ignore this person? Do you, look, when I'm done with a gig, I ain't hanging around and hanging out with you until 4 a.m. I'm going home. Why? I got a family at home. I don't want to show up at 4 a.m, them know I got done at 1 a.m., then be like, well, where have you been? Right? This is not a question that I want them to understand. And if I was going to say, I got a buddy who wants to talk, I would let my wife know where I'm going, right? But if this situation were happening in a club I'm playing in, let's say you're in an indie band, and it will. You get in an indie band, and there's going to be, if you're a guy, there's probably going to be some birds that come around, some ladies that come around, and, I don't know. It just happens. So you have to understand how to deal with it. How do I deal with it? Well, I don't engage. If I see the band over there talking, no, that seems like trouble. You know what I'm saying? I will not. I will go somewhere else. To the point of sometimes I have seemed rude. I'm not trying to be rude, but I have seemed rude. And I had a guy say, he said, "Man, you just like split. How do you do that? They're like want to talk to you and you just split." And I'm like, I just get in my car. He's like, "Yeah, but don't you want to talk to him?" And I'm like, "Not relevant." He's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "It's not relevant what I want to do. It's relevant what I do. And I know that if I don't get in a car and drive away from a situation, I think that I would be fine, but maybe not. Maybe I wouldn't." And that's the slow downhill slide whenever we're talking about a moral conviction within a gig. You don't have to be of a certain faith. Come on, we all have morals. You make that one concession, and then you make that next one, and that next one, and then and before you know it, you look and you're like, oh crap, I'm in a lot of trouble, right? So we have to stop it. We have to have guardrails in our life that stop us before we ever fall off the cliff. And that's what we're doing, is setting those. That doesn't have to be with women or guys. If you're a lady playing, that doesn't have to be. Although I will be honest, girls don't seem to have as much of a problem with this side of it. As far as interested or not, it's pretty much it's pretty cut and dried with them. They're either interested or not. No amount of badgering them is going to make that different. But with guys specifically, the opposite sex has been a bigger deal. I've had women walk up to the stage and put their hotel room key, pass it over to me. Yeah, I'm going to come to your random hotel room. That sounds like I don't even know what some people are thinking. Oh my gosh, if my daughter ever did this with a guy, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, who's your dad? I sound old. I'm not that old, but I got kids, and I'm like, who is your dad? Are they cool with this? I don't want to come. Also, are you okay? Are things safe? That's what I'm thinking in my brain. But we have to set these lines of things that you will do. When I worked at the club on Bourbon Street, I was young, we were getting married, and there were some jobs that they would ask me to do for extra money, and I really had to decide, am I okay with doing this job for the club, or am I only okay with playing music? One night during Mardi Gras, they needed somebody to stand behind the bouncers. These guys were massive. And take the money, hold the money. It was $20 or $30 to get in the door. He said, "I just need somebody to hold the cash that I trust." And he said, "And I trust you." And I said, "Well, I appreciate that." I didn't have a problem doing that. But later in the evening, some things that happened, which some of them I've still never told people, they didn't happen to me. They just happened and I was like, I should not have signed on to this. This is an environment I don't think I want to be in. So we have to set those parameters. When you're in a band, you have to set the parameter of understanding who you're in the band with. And it's not that you can't be in a band with people that, lovers and liars. Let's say the band that I was in, we had two people that were totally left-leaning politically and two people that were totally right-leaning politically. We had, there were several areas in our lives where we were polar opposites. It wasn't a problem. I loved those guys to death. It didn't bother me a bit. Look, that's fine. I'm not going to engage. I don't believe that. I'm not going to engage in that. That doesn't make you a wrong person or bad person. It just means for me, that's not my life, right? That's not how I'm going to live. I don't think that's a good idea for me. And so we have to understand when we're in a band, you're going to spend a lot of time with those people. And so you have to vet that situation to understand, is this a situation I want to put myself in? But you can't get good at that. Back to talking to you, Declan. You can't get good at that unless you put yourself in those situations, unless you allow that rub for you to be and then what happens is situation happens, you go home and you think about it and you go, okay, I wasn't okay with this. I was okay with this. I responded in this way and I should have responded in that way. I think I'm going to make a rule, and then you make your rule and it eliminates you having to make that decision ever again. You're like, what rule? Oh, I don't know. Let's see. One of my easy rules was I don't go to hotel rooms from girls that give me keys when I'm on stage, right? I'm not going to do it. And if you're a girl, Don't go to a guy's hotel room. He passes you a key on stage. This is a bad idea. There's a lot of bad things that could happen here. Maybe it could be a fun night. I don't know. But for me, I'm like, I'd be sitting there the whole time thinking, oh, this could blow my whole life up. It definitely could. You shouldn't do it. You know, what if there's 3 guys waiting at the hotel room to jump you because you made like $30 in tips, right? Like, you never know. It's just probably better to make the rule, don't do that, right? There are other situations where I have rules, and they may not be spoken rules to other people. They're just rules for me where, okay, it's this type of situation. It pays this much, and that's not enough for me to be away from my family. I'm sorry, I can't do this gig. I won't tell them that. I just simply say I can't do this gig. And if it is an issue of money, I may be like, is this what the gig pays, or can you pay more? And if they say no, I'll say, yeah, I'm sorry, I just can't. Right now, it's going to take me away from too much, and it's just not, I can't do it. It's not worth my time. And sometimes I will tell them that. And what happens is you either A, don't get a call from them again because they don't have enough to pay you, or you B, the next time they call, they pay you what you said you wanted to be paid. So it goes either way. I'm not taking the gig if you call me because it doesn't pay enough, and that's not always. Pay is not all the thing that I judge a gig by the way. So many of them I don't. I'm doing some gigs here in a couple of months. They don't pay what I think I should get paid, but the people involved are awesome, and I can't wait. I can't wait to get to that gig. The pay is just like, do I get paid to do this? That's awesome. This is great music. This is a great fun show. It's going to be for the people involved. They're awesome. Why wouldn't I do it? You know, I'm always like, yeah, go do it. I'm like, awesome. It pays enough. It's fine, you know? But in that gig, that pay is it's not about pay. It's not always about pay. It can't always be about pay. You have to sometimes do things for your creative soul. You have to sometimes do things for your financial soul. You have to sometimes do things for your family soul. Like, there's these different things that we have to do. When I, because I used to travel and tour a lot, and then probably about 10 or 11 years ago, maybe a little bit more, I came off the road and was just like, okay, I can't do this. It's too much time away from my family. And when I went back on the road, I had a lot of students that were concerned about me because at almost every show I got to meet students, which was awesome, amazing. The students that I've been teaching for years, they would say, "How's your family doing?" Like, because it was a lot of time away, and I knew going in this was not a long-term sustainable thing. And as I got into it about a year and a half, it started to show, like, kids were not happy. Dad was gone all the time. Kelly was having trouble keeping up with everything. We had 2 teenagers. They had jobs, social lives. Like, I needed to be home. No matter amount of money, I needed to be home. I needed to provide too, but providing could not mean that meant it took me away all the time, unless that was the only option we had. And then it could be a short-term option to get us to where we needed to be, right? This is for me how it needs to be. I would, so even those pillars, they got out of whack. We knew they would, but then they got way out of whack. I was like, okay, this isn't going to work. I can't do this, right? And so we have to look at those things in our lives. Otherwise, you wind up in a spot you didn't mean to wind up in. And I applaud you, Declan, for thinking through these things. I know that you're at the beginning of the career and thinking through them, and it's good to think through them. But as you're thinking through them, let's take action. Let's go, you know what? There's nothing morally wrong with me going and taking gigs in bars or clubs. There's nothing morally wrong with me gigging with this indie band. There's nothing. Take the gigs. Go out and meet the people. See what comes of it. And then assess each situation. Assess the situation. Assess the people in the situation. Assess the music in the situation. Assess the events that happen. And assess your responses to those events. And by doing that, you're going to start creating some pretty good guardrails where you don't have to ask anymore. You just know, like, yeah, this isn't the situation for me. When I first moved to Nashville, there was a couple of artists that I respected, well-known, approached me for gigs, and I knew what the road life was like, and I didn't want to do it. I said, I think I could do this gig, but you guys are going to not like me on the gig because I'm going to kind of be the killjoy. So I don't think I should do the gig. And I was just upfront with them. I would go for auditions, and before I even sat down to audition, I knew I didn't want to do the gig. but I auditioned because it was good practice and I was already there, right? So there are different things. You don't even have to want to do the gig if you go audition. You could just be like, I want to get better at auditioning. I'm going to go audition. I'm kind of on the fence about this. Maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't, but I want to do the audition to get better at auditioning. There's a million ways to split this, but what I would advise you to do is really spend some time thinking about what do you want your life to look like 10, 15, 20 years? Morally, faith-wise, family-wise, career-wise, financial-wise, creatively-wise, drumming, all these. Think through them. Write down some things, some goals. And then we have this roadmap that we start accepting things and weaving that, because the path is not, it's not a direct path, and the path isn't already paved for us. We have to chop down those trees, right? It's like we're going on, out west, and we got to figure out a path. We have to chop down those trees so we can figure out a path to get to where we want to go. And every gig's a little tree that you kind of get out of your way. Or you choose, we're going to leave that one alone. We're going to go this direction. But sometimes going this direction means you don't have forward motion. It's sideways motion, but it's the quickest way forward. And then we'll cut over here. So you have to it's just a step-by-step thing that's going to take you a long time. But it starts with, what are your goals? What are your do's and don'ts? Are you okay with? What are the pillars that you're building your life around? And then if a gig comes up and it checks off all the boxes, it's like, okay, let's go. Whenever I went out, I accepted the gig with the Steel Woods. I came home and told my wife, I said, hey, there's a band that wants me to do some shows with them. Pretty good following. They'd be fun shows. And she looked at me and she said, so like a touring thing, huh? And I'm like, yeah, like that. And she was doing laundry. She was doing laundry and folding stuff, and she plopped some towels into the basket and picked it up and looked at me and said, and walked out. And I was like, okay, well, it wasn't a no, but in that instant, because I have allowed these pillars to be built and I have referred to them so much, and I understand, if she would have said no, I would have gone back and said, sorry, I can't do it. Why? Does my wife get to run my career? No, she doesn't, because she has just as much respect for me and knows that I know you love playing music. I know this is a cool opportunity. Go ahead and do it. I don't know if I want this long term, but let's go ahead and try it out. I have that respect coming from her, and she knows coming from me. She knows at any moment she could pull a trump card, and I'd say, okay, cool. And she knows if I kicked back about that, if she said no, and then I said, well, come on, hold on. She knows I have a good reason, right? We have that mutual respect for each other. So anyway, that was a long way to say, start taking the gigs, man. I think you're going to have fun. I think you're going to learn a lot. And I think that it's going to help you define the path that you need to take for your career.